Ian with eTrailer here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Curt wiring harness for 4-pole connector on our 2024 Buick Encore GX. Let's get into a few features and then that install. So to be able to use our 4-pole when we are getting hooked up to the trailer, this lives in the back of the vehicle opposed to being down where the hitch is, and everything just coils up nicely underneath our cargo carrier here. And then it's as simple as just taking that provided dust cap off, dropping this out the back of the tailgate, getting the tailgate closed back up, which again, it does not cause any obstruction or any issue. You just have to watch out for that latch in the center. But other than that, we're ready to either hook up to our accessory or trailer. With this living back here, the only thing you're ever going to see for this kit once installed is this wire. Everything else is back behind the plastics, so very, very nice visual appeal if you're just looking for something that's going to be that weekender hookup for your 4-pole opposed to something that lives outside of the vehicle permanently. The kit we're using is going to be the non-LED version. There is also a Curt option that is for LED tail lights and running lights, so if you've got that situation, you may want to just double check you're grabbing the right part number there. I would say with the install of this one, it's a great option because it's got a module that's going to give you surge protection and wiring protection directly into your vehicle, keeping you safe from anything that may be going on with your trailer or accessory. That's a wonderful thing to have, and very, very common on these, but this one absolutely works great. And speaking of that install, I wouldn't say this is a difficult install by any means. It is a little labor intensive as far as figuring out where to run the wiring and how you want to get everything mounted up under the plastics, just because there's not a whole lot of room to work in the rear here. But we'll walk you through that process, and it's going to be a little easier for us because we are putting a hitch on this at the exact same time, so we're already going to have the fascia off. But let's walk through those steps and get this put on, and if it's not something you want to tackle, please check out that dealer locator for us on the website. To begin the install, just for safety purposes, we're going to go ahead and remove our negative terminal and get that away from the battery post. It is a 10mm on the retention point there, so just get that nut loose, and we'll lift that up and get it tucked back behind. You may have to wedge something in between it just so they're not touching. I've gone ahead and taken some painter's tape that I put at all the contact points of where the fascia will be coming off, just so we avoid any scratching on the paint or up towards the tail lights here. But then we're going to come to the tail light cover and use a small flat head to remove both of the two covers that are on that. And we'll take a T15 bit and remove both of those. Then for the lower one, it is recessed in there a bit more. So what I did to be able to get these out effectively is back them most of the way out, give it just a couple threads in, so that way we're not going to drop it down into the plastic, and use a set of needle nose here just to get that last thread off. That way we've got a good grip on them and can bring that out safely. We can now remove the tail light assembly. You may need to use just a little wedge or something to get along that edge, and we'll pry outwards away from the vehicle. And that will pop loose. And we're going to carefully let that hang to the side for now. To remove the tail lights, the connectors are back in the body of the vehicle For the driver's side, very easy to access because they gave you this nice little porthole, and you can just go back and to the left and access that tail light assembly. To remove that, there's this little red locking tab that'll just pull downwards, and then you'll push on this gray tab right below that, and you'll feel the click once it releases, and just give that a good snug pull and that'll disconnect. This was the one that was on the driver's side. It is the same connector on the passenger side, just very difficult to show since they're tucked back in that body. They did not give us an access hole on the passenger side, so it is a little more difficult to get to that connector. What I've done is remove the cover that covers up our spare tire here, and we're going to pull a little plastic poppet from down at the bottom here, a plastic cover here at the rear of it, and then you will want to pull the cover that is the protector for all the stuff in the rear of the vehicle, because this whole plastic panel will need to come loose for us to access that. There are also two hooks, one up front and then one here at the rear that will need to be removed. Those are both 11 millimeter, so go ahead and get those taken off and just get all the hardware set to the side. We're then going to come along towards the top here, right at where this junction of the two plastic pieces start, and work our way down, just loosening this up because it does sit over the edge of all the plastics we're going to be removing. With that seal pulled back, we can go ahead and get this center plastic piece out. So you'll just want to grab the edges and pull up and just work your way down. All the clips are in the center of this, so good even pressure should get that out without any problem. Now we'll need to start working up this plastic panel. There's going to be, again, all the center points going up are the attachment points. You can kind of find those with your finger and pull right up against them so that way they don't break. Pulling all that loose, and we're going to come up to right about here. There's going to be one more set up at the top that'll need to come loose. Then we can kind of work this away. Then that plug on the passenger side, we're just going to pry the plastic out of the way, and you'll see the same type of connector we talked about from that driver side one. Again, pulling that red tab down, giving it a good firm press, and pulling apart. Now up to this point, we've been working to get our wiring in place. With us having to remove the fascia for the hitch as well, it's kind of a two bird, one stone. We wouldn't want to have to take all that apart, and especially with getting to those plugs on the tail lights like I was showing you, we wouldn't want to have to do that twice. So while I'm putting in our wiring here, we're going to go ahead and get the hitch on as well, so that way we've got that to complement our wiring harness. So from that same area on the driver's side that we accessed the plug-in for our tail light, we're going to mount the controller box in there. It does have a ground wire that we're going to need to self-tap into somewhere on the body, and then there's also the power wire. So I've already gone ahead and hooked up the driver's side tail lights, and I've just got that set up to where we can hang out the end that's going to hook directly to the tail lights there, just so it's out of the way. But I've ran our power wire here, and they give you that big spool that we had talked about for that to run under the vehicle. So I came through that. We did end up having to take all of that plastic paneling back to run the power wire down. And then behind where this trim panel would sit, there's this grommet that goes all the way through to the outside for your rear sensors. All I did was cut in slightly into that, push the power wire through, reseal that with some RTV, and then put that zip tie there to help keep that all together. We're coming down. There's a hole right here next to where the bumper and your hitch mount up. So I've got that zip tied to that going down, and underneath the vehicle up against the frame rail. For the passenger side hookup, it's the same situation as having to run that power wire. So there's a single green wire that comes out of the control box. I've gone down just like we did for the power wire, but instead of going through the grommet, I've gone even further down by where the spare tire mat is going to sit. Followed that all the way across, and you'll see here it's just peeking out a little bit out of the top. Again, down under the plastics and up to that plug that's pretty hard to access. There's going to be two plugs on that end. One is exactly like the hookup off of the tail light, and then the other one is for the connector that's in the vehicle. So just make sure they're not switchable by any means, but when you're up there trying to get in that tight space, it can be difficult to differentiate the two. Last wire coming off the control box that we kind of need to get routed out of the space that it's going to live is that 4-pole wiring. Since that's going to be something that just flops up out of the vehicle opposed to being routed through anywhere, and we're going to have this come out of the tailgate, I've got that ran again the exact same way I did the power wire and our wire that goes to the passenger side, but instead I've pushed it up under the mat towards the front of the vehicle, so that way we can still have the top closure above this spare tire closed all the way. And then with those new plugs out of the hole, we're just going to hook back up like we did with that one inside here. Making sure we get that good click. And then we'll put our lock back down, and that can be pushed back to where the grommet is, and we'll replace that grommet where it was as well. And with those slid back into place, replace those two T15s here. There is a factory ground that we can use for the module here in the rear of the vehicle, so I'm going to go ahead and just get this loose here, and then we'll put that eyelet from the control module with the white wire on it onto that ground. With that tightened down, that's going to be the best solution I found for the ground wire. You could always self-tap it to somewhere on the body in that same hole, but much easier just to use the factory ground there. Last hookup we're going to need to worry about coming from the control module here is going to be the black wire, which is going to be our power. We've already got that wire ran underneath the vehicle going up to our 12-volt source, and so we just need to get that attached to the module here. So we'll strip down the end of our source wire, give that a good twist here, and then use the provided yellow butt connector, and we'll get that on, get that end crimped. And then take the power wire from the module, get that in the other end of the butt connector, and crimped as well. 99% isopropyl alcohol in to clean off the area we will be applying our double-sided tape to here. So I think this is just going to live somewhere back in this area, just depending on how those wires want to sit. And we'll also clean the back of the module. Take our adhesive off of this and apply that to the back of the module. And again, this does have that hole to be able to use a self-tapper if you didn't want to put any adhesive in there, but this isn't any part of the vehicle that's going to be seen, so should be fine. Just tucking this back into place. You may have to just kind of adjust until you find a good spot where you get enough of a grab. From that hole that we came through, we're going to tie to the brake, not the actual line itself here, but the mount for that. And then we're coming to the second mount right next to it, just so it keeps everything out of any moving parts or any heat at all. And just following more lines going forward, up around the tank. And then the lines back here are plastic, so I did follow the rest of the brake lines coming forward all the way down the center of the vehicle, of course choosing to go away from the exhaust here to try to keep that from becoming an issue later on. And just used all those existing brackets, tying to the bracket, not the lines, all the way up. And then through the engine bay, still following those lines and up to our battery. Now we're going to take that 12-volt wire, strip that end back just like we did at the rear of the vehicle to hook up the power. We're going to come over to our positive on the 12-volt source here. Looks like we've got a stud we can put that on too, but first we'll need to set up our fuse holder. We want to do all this without the fuse in it. It is provided with the kit, but we just want to leave it out until we're all hooked up. And to set up the fuse holder, we'll start with one end is going to get a ring terminal. And then our other end, we'll be getting the other yellow butt connector that comes with the kit. And we'll hook that up to the wire going back to the module and give that a good crimping as well. We've had a couple vehicles in the last week, all GM products, that these studs for the power strips, the way they've got them set up between this one and on the fuse box, the main power inlets have a tendency of sometimes breaking off. We're going to try to avoid that here. So I'm going to remove the 10mm nut down here instead of that top stud, just to avoid any possible breakage that might happen during that, like we've seen. Now we're going to snug down that 10mm there. Go ahead and get our 10 amp fuse put into the fuse holder and get that closed up. And we'll get our negative terminal reconnected. Again, that is a 10mm nut on that one as well. Gonna run that test. We'll make sure we've got a left, a right, a brake, and of course clearance lights on and clearance lights off. And that's going to do for our look at and installation of the Curt 4-pole wiring harness on our 2024 Buick Encore GX. My name's Ian with eTrailer. Appreciate you watching.